Mark Kimmitt. He is a former Deputy Assistant U.S. Secretary of Defense. He's with me now in the studio. There's so much to talk about, and we have talked about a lot over the last 2 days. But this time I actually wanted to get to the war in Syria again with you, because the Obama administration, which Joe Biden was obviously a part of as vice president, you know, they were not on the same page as Turkey, with two really backing conflicting forces immediately on Turkey's border with Syria. So if Biden takes office, you know, and gets advisors, as we mentioned before, like Susan Rice back on board, who loves calling the YPG America's Kurdish friends that saved us from Daesh and that are now threatened by Turkey, what happens?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. There is a concern among those of us that believe the situation in Syria is being handled right now with regards to American involvement, that the next administration may try to reverse the current policy. But let's be clear. Nobody should have been surprised that President Trump reduced forces in Syria. He came in under a campaign promise of ending forever wars. He could not understand what we were doing in Syria once Daesh was defeated. He decided to reduce forces in that country and have a NATO ally pick up where we left off. That could have been seen from a mile away, particularly since the forces that we were operating with were, by President Obama's defense secretary's words, a declared terrorist organization. So here we had a choice to make: a NATO ally to support or declared terrorist organization to support. I think he made the right decision. But under a Biden administration, there is a very strong relationship, long-standing relationship between Vice President Biden and the Kurds in Iraq and the Kurds, by extension, inside of Syria. It was he as vice president was the one that was instrumental in the policy to support using northern Syria as a base to fight ISIS. So I would expect that his advisors will say, and if Susan Rice could very well be one of them, job's not done. Daesh still has one or two guys running around. We have a responsibility to go after Daesh. That gives us the congressional authority to get back in large numbers into Syria. And for goodness sakes, we can get back into the same foxholes with our closest allies, the YPG. So, a long answer to a short question, but it simply comes down to the fact that the Biden administration, a Biden administration, will have a more sympathetic view of the YPG in northern Syria, and unlike the view that President Trump took in that regard.
It's still hard to reconcile, though, how the United States would really alienate such an important NATO ally in order to defend the interests of a group that they want to say have defended the United States, but really they were defending themselves, and there was, you know, an issue of trying to gain some own territory for their own taking. But why they would sacrifice that and compromise the relationship with such an important ally in the region?
Well, I think it comes down to two things. Number one, President Trump did in fact say, we are going to destroy Daesh. But there's a very interesting technical point about what destruction means. Does it mean killing every last ISIS trooper, or does it mean taking away their capability to operate out of a caliphate and extend their military forces in large numbers around the region?
Right.
It was the case that President Trump said, I think we've done enough there. They're not going to be a large-scale threat anymore. But we have this odd pathology for the military. Former soldier, I understand this. When you fought for years and years side by side with another force inside a foxhole, you've shed blood together, you've built relationships together, they have shown bravery. There's automatically a foxhole buddy mentality that has been built up between the two forces. So I think that's where the conflict ended up.
Okay. But another issue that could play a role in how that policy is determined actually going forward is where the U.S. Senate goes and what the makeup of the Congress is after this election. I know you disagreed actually with our analyst earlier about the Senate remaining in Republican control. That might not actually happen, you were saying. There's still a lot up for grabs. If it does go blue, I mean, how would that factor into especially the relationship with Turkey here?
Yeah, and what I want to specifically say is there is still a chance, perhaps small, but a chance nonetheless, that the Senate remains in the hands of the Democrats. There are two special elections, certainly one in Georgia, possibly a second if the leading candidate right now, David Perdue, does not achieve 50% or more. And if you don't get more than 50% in either case, either with Loeffler or with Perdue, it goes to a runoff. And it's not beyond the realm of possibility. In fact, it's a moderate probability that the Democrats could win in the runoffs. So what does that mean for these kind of policies? Well, there is bipartisan support on the specific issue of Syria. Even though there's been this large conflict about the president's authority to use military force, candidly, the perception of the Kurds and the perceptions of the government of Turkey inside Washington, D.C., specifically at the U.S. Senate, differs widely.
Okay. Mark Kimmitt, we're going to leave it there, but we will be seeing you again in our 16 GMT program. Thanks as always so much for joining us and sharing your analysis.